Lost in a Virtual Mouse Maze, an exploration of Empire in a virtual ergodic text. This was a collaborative project between myself, Chris Healy, and Ryan Stern. Our goal was to create sort of a mall aesthetic while also creating a sense of being trapped inside of this mall. Throughout the piece, we placed all sorts of references to different Marxist literature, mostly along the autonomous movement, which take the form of quotations placed on the floor, as well as the overall general theme of being trapped in this space of consumption. Our overall message coming from this was supposed to be that the society of consumption in which we live is ultimately a problem that traps us and prevents us from being able to sort of think for ourselves. Along the theme of being caught inside of a labyrinth, we decided to place all sorts of different potential solutions to the maze. There is no one simple correct answer, and this is something that we attempted to capture in the beginning with a piece of text that appears along the bottom of the screen when the player begins the maze that informs them that to remember that there is not necessarily a right or wrong way of going about solving the maze. So there are all sorts of rewards placed throughout the maze in the form of corporate logos, and the player is awarded a fictional sense of points, which we've called maze points, for touching them, which ultimately make no difference to the player's experience within the maze, but they're meant to serve as potential alternative exits. And as we'll see as this demonstration comes towards the end, there's also a sort of an alternate trick ending to conclude the maze itself as well. You'll also notice that there are several color changes in the general aesthetic of the maze that occur fairly frequently. And these are meant to give a sense of a checkpoint to the player to let them know that they are progressing through the maze to the next stage. These checkpoints also frequently follow some sort of an obstacle within the maze that the player must overcome. So on screen right now, for example, you can see that the player must fly over this particular obstacle, which in this case also gave us a chance to demonstrate that the ceiling is one-sided, although the player can see upward to the bottom in order to observe that they are being watched by what are ostensibly researchers from above. At that same time, they would not be able to cheat by zooming out their player's view in order to watch from above. We tried to include several pop culture references inside of the maze to remind players of sort of the contemporary time within which we live. What's on screen now being an example of that. The cheese is a trap, which is a reference to a video game called Portal, in which case the player is trapped inside of a research facility and is told that the cake, which is being promised to them at the end of their ordeal, is a lie. So in this case, the player is sort of being hinted that what is to come in this maze, what is the ultimate reward, which we'll see here on screen in a second, isn't necessarily what it appears to be. So ultimately the player comes to this final room at the center of the maze and is confronted by a piece of cheese on a table. Keeping along the theme of this being a mouse maze. But when the cheese is clicked to be interacted with, the room itself encloses around the player, and they become trapped inside of a room with a pattern very similar to the very beginning of the maze. And the only objects in the room are the cheese reward and a chair. Clicking on the chair teleports the player back to the very beginning of the maze, where they must decide whether they are to re-enter the mall or to give up entirely. A central theme of autonomous Marxist literature, which we've also tried to capture in this piece, is that one of the main forms of struggle against the control and domination of empire is refusal. And this is something that we tried to encapsulate in the true exit to our maze, because by waiting at the maze's entrance and refusing to participate within the maze or the mall, the player is rewarded with an opening of a door that leads to sort of the alternate exit, or the true exit, which is essentially the back door of the mall itself, that leads to blue skies and green fields. a veritable paradise.